Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, this will be my third video on a topic that I believe is very important for NPD and Cluster B recovery, which is prioritizing engagement in the world over emotionality. Okay, in other words, just trying to shift a little bit the priority in my core programmed being. Okay, deep down inside where I have the basic programming. Okay, to try to change that programming so that I will start to prioritize engagement in the world over how I feel, basically. Okay, so it's just kind of shifting priorities. And today I want to talk about a very core aspect of that programming, that reprogramming, okay, that I think is essential to anybody, not just a person with a personality disorder, which is incorporating into our core programming, okay, a real experience and a conditioning, okay, to implement trade-off. Okay, trade-off. Okay, and basically the idea is that it's almost like a very simple, like arithmetic or algebraic process inside of us, where we consciously and also even unconsciously, okay, where we just have we have like a known process inside of us, okay, and almost like a programmed routine, okay, where we will trade discomfort in exchange for a longer term benefit. All right. It doesn't make any sense to just intellectually understand that you can trade discomfort for a longer term benefit. The intellectual knowledge is worth almost nothing. Okay. Because in real behavioral life, you have to have conditioning. You have to have conditioning. In the same way that just reading a lot of books on football and knowing what a quarterback has to do will not make you a good quarterback. Okay, you have to train. It takes years and years and years and a lot of talent and a lot of exercise and a lot of practice to actually be able to execute as a quarterback. It doesn't matter how many books you've read. It doesn't matter what you know about the position. The intellectual value is almost nothing. So I think my encouragement to most people is to look at our behavior in the world as equivalent to sports. Okay, it is not academics, it is sports. Okay, so our actual activity in the world is a sport. Okay, it really is a sport, and you cannot be good at a sport by knowing the sport. Okay, so life in a sense is a sport. Okay, now having intellectual knowledge may be part of your overall package that you bring to the sport. Okay, so like, yeah, a quarterback who watches a lot of videotape and who studies his plays and knows the other teams, that's going to help them. Okay, but there is that conditioning aspect that will help us actually complete the circuit, to be able to effectively participate in the sport of life. Okay, because life is a sport. Okay, so anything having to do with human behavior, okay, I think needs to be regarded a little beyond just the sitting in a sofa or reading books. It is more than intellectual. Okay, so as soon as we approach anything involving human behavior and human interaction with the world, we are talking about sports. Okay, it is sport. So you have two choices. You can either be conditioned, or you can basically, I'm sorry, you can fail, because you will fail at the sport if you're not conditioned for it. So I can't explain why. There's kind of an intellectual anti-sport, or sort of like kind of an intellectual bias in our world, where sports is kind of like optional. Some people do it, some people don't. Where sports is kind of like, oh, that's for the people that like sports. I don't know why we've divided the world like that, because all interaction in the world is behavioral interaction in the world is a sport. Okay, it's just there's no other way to talk about it. So we just have two choices. We can either be conditioned, or we're screwed. I don't know any other way to say it. So, anybody who thinks they can go through life being deconditioned or not being conditioned, go ahead, try it. Try it. See how far that gets you. I don't even know how to comment on that. And again, I'm guilty. I'm guilty as well. I didn't want to see life as a sport, but it is. It really is. And so, knowledge is okay, and knowledge is not a bad thing, but whatever we don't have conditioned into our programming, in our program behavior through practice, okay, is not going to be useful to us. Okay, it just won't be. So um, you know I'm going to talk about a very specific part of our programming that is not good enough just to know. Everybody knows. Anybody. I could talk to 90% of cluster B people, narcissists, psychopaths. They all intellectually know that it is useful to trade discomfort for a longer term benefit. We all know this. But in the actual sport as it unfolds in life, okay, in real time, it doesn't it isn't effectively expressed in us. Okay, in other words, we may know it, but it's not established in us as a program. Okay, so you know given that I have the temperament of cluster B, am I going to be, extra specially talented at implementing that program? Is that going to be like my most natural maneuver? No, of course not. I tend to be driven by how I feel. Okay, I'm being honest. I tend to be driven more by how I feel than, let's say prioritizing, the logistics of actually engaging in the world. Okay, I tend to be more driven by how I feel. Okay, and so what that does is that kind of dominates my psychology. So that sort of takes me out of my engagement with the world, so that my primary operating motives are how I feel. Okay, and even when I do engage in the world, the way I engage with the world is filtered by how it's going to make me feel, and protecting my feelings. Okay, so I have to kind of try to reverse that. Okay, and one of the important like subroutines, if we're thinking of it like computer programming, is we have to establish in ourselves almost an unconscious and barely conscious and immediate routine, where even under stress, even when we're in real time, in the real unfolding of the contact sport, okay, in real time, we can activate the program, okay, to trade off discomfort, okay, and actually welcome the discomfort, because we are tactically and logistically, we're doing it in exchange for something better overall. Okay, and that's through an unfiltered assessment. Okay, so in other words, not necessarily better for me, but just better in general. So as we make our assessments in the world, for example, we talk about opening the window and not filtering information from the outside, and just dealing with the environment. Okay, so that you start to take the I out of it. It's just, what is better? What is better? What is better? It's not to say that when we look at something better, we totally disregard how it'll be for us, but we look at the whole picture. Okay, so it may not be like a tremendous benefit for me, as I decide how to behave in the world. At times, maybe I'll just get a marginal benefit, or maybe no benefit at that moment. Okay, but it will be a benefit, let's say, to the overall environmental circumstance. You know what I mean? Like, say, if I live in a small neighborhood with the neighbors, there may be some decisions that I have to make that are going to be better, let's say, for my neighbors, maybe not for me specifically. But even I know that, and if you really think about it, if I'm operating in my, let's say, in the environment of my neighborhood, okay, and I do certain things that are maybe more for the benefit of my neighbors, okay, I know that in the long term, okay, I'm enriching my relationship with my neighbors, okay, and I know that that's part of having a better overall situation, okay, not just for myself, but for the overall environment that I live in, okay. And so in the end, I am, sometimes I'll be trading off personal interest or personal feeling, whatever, maybe even personal comfort, because I know some decisions are for the overall benefit of the situation that I live in. Okay, the environmental situation. Okay, and then in the end, if it doesn't, it's not hard to understand that if in the end you're always contributing to improving the situation around you. Okay, that is overall a beneficial course. That's course of dealings, course of action. Okay, so over the long term, you're actually contributing to more, let's say, positive situation. You're improving the overall situation around you, okay, and in the world itself. And you're sort of slowly kind of taking the personal aspect out of it. But it's very clear that you're specifically whatever discomfort you have, whatever maybe delayed gratifications or whatever, it's all in the interest of doing something that's in improvement, that's in the interest, that's in the core, in the it's in the it's in the process, it's how would my words are just not coming out, but it's it's in the progress towards making things better. Okay. And I think that's very important for us with cluster B, that when we operate towards making things better, okay, it's not just about me, it's about the environment that I live in, because that's what engagement is all about. We engage in the world because we are getting into how, this, we're getting into sort of the status, not just of me, but how everything around me and in my environment is going. Okay. So, um, intellectually, we know that, the status of our environment is not just me, myself, but we have to, if you don't train yourself to tolerate some discomforts and some non gratifications, okay, you won't effectively be able to sort of indiscriminately operate towards the improvement of things outside of yourself. Okay. I mean, it's just almost mathematical. If you're going to not be discriminatory as to what gets improved around you, whether it's you yourself or the things around you, you are going to have some trade-off where you get some discomfort, or you get some situations where you're not attending to your immediate need to be gratified. Okay. So it is a trade-off. Okay. You're trading off your own gratification, or in some cases, you're actually trading off some discomfort. Okay. Actual discomfort in the service of making things better. Okay. So I guess if you're going to cash out the actual like computer programming of it, okay, it's trading off a certain amount of not feeling good, okay, in exchange for something better, basically. Okay, so that is trade-off. It's basically, yes, I'll have some discomfort, but it's for something better. All right. And so it should be very a compact, almost algebraic process. It's almost like a very compact, almost mathematical proposition or computer science kind of proposition. And I guess I'm assuming that when you grow up in a very healthy family, okay, the parents and the uncles and the people and neighbors around you, okay, they already have very well established, okay, that healthy program where, in order to have the best overall environment, okay, that you will sometimes have to trade a little bit of discomfort for things being better in the environment, okay. And so I think that that gives off a kind of a vibe, because you see people sort of welcoming discomfort, but knowing it's for something better. So it's a combination of maybe a little bit of pain, and sometimes maybe a lot of pain. Sometimes there may be moments where you really have to experience real pain, because you've actually, that you're doing it in exchange for something better. Okay, so it's not like you're just suffering just to suffer, but you're suffering in the exercise and in the action to make things better. Okay, so it's almost like introducing a new flavor. Okay, if you're used to just sweet and sour, or sweet and bitter, this is almost like bittersweet, where you learn to get more complex flavors. Okay, and you learn to actually accept and welcome complex flavors. So this is almost like the bittersweet, and anybody who's a fan of music, okay, if you know anything about, or just have intuitively, if you understand things like harmonics, like melody and harmony, there are some harmonies that are very kind of almost like bittersweet, where you can almost sense the pain in the harmonic, in the chords, but you can sense that it's combined with a sweetness, and these are very rich chords. Okay, so it's almost like we're adding like very rich harmonics into our life, and we're learning to see the benefit and the beauty of it. Okay, and I think we're sort of we're sort of born with the ability, I think, to appreciate those complex beauties, and I think the more complex the beauty, I think the more touching it is for us, and the more meaningful I think it is. And so it's almost like entering into if you look at it in terms of aesthetics, it's almost like entering into a more complex, more meaningful aesthetic of life, where we're getting into a richer form of beauty, And I think it's also very good for our metabolism, because as we start to welcome discomfort, okay, I believe that there are aspects of our whole body, not just our mind, that when we have discomforts and when we have unpleasantness, weighing on us and being in us. Okay. I think there is a metabolic, we have a way of metabolizing that when it's not quickly resolved. Okay. So, in other words, walking around with some intentional welcoming of discomfort, okay, that actually allows us to metabolize that. And I think our metabolism is different when we have sort of welcomed discomfort in our life, or when we accept and don't resist discomfort in our life, when it's accepted. All right. And I think that we ought to give ourselves the opportunity to sort of take on discomfort to allow a richer metabolic process. Because I think we do metabolize whatever we're feeling. I think even our emotions are metabolized. Okay. And so as we welcome a richer, sort of a richer, I guess, like as we welcome sort of a richer sort of spectrum of emotions in us, okay, we're broadening also the metabolism as we metabolize those emotions. Okay. And why is it reasonable to say that we metabolize emotions? Because every emotion is a different chemical cocktail. Okay. Every emotion is a different chemical cocktail. Okay. And as long as we're not like on the severe end, where we're like, just like brewing in cortisol, or, just like destroying ourselves with toxic, endorphins or whatever those things. I mean, as long as it's not like off the charts, as we develop more complex emotional states, okay, it's a much more complex chemical load that may activate a richer metabolic kind of washing to sort of wash through all those, that broader emotional situation. Okay. So in other words, as we load ourselves with a more complex emotional, almost like I'd say chemicals, the chemical situation of being in a more like frustrated, a more tense, a more unresolved, I think of almost like unresolved harmonics in music. It's sort of like it's a lot of dissonance. It's a lot of almost strain. I wouldn't say stress. I would say strain. But as you have richer, emotional states, okay, chemically, there's a lot broader panorama to have to metabolize. Okay, so it activates a more holistic metabolism in the body, and I think it actually may help even make us more healthy physically. Okay, so I think I don't distinguish between emotions, mental, and physical. I think it's all physical. So the richer sort of like panorama of emotions that we can sort of have loaded on us. Okay, I think the broader our activated metabolic process. So in other words, it's kind of like going from eating, like just say just candy and rice and like a real simple diet. Imagine like a simple diet, just hamburgers, French fries, and Coke. It's almost like going from there to eating like really complex diet. Where you're having like say sweet potatoes and carrots and maybe beetroot and different greens and different meats, and it's sort of like richening the diet basically, and sort of getting away from the simple, sort of like simple and maybe too simple diet, which maybe is not good for the body. It may decondition the body. It may stress out the body. So basically, I think there's a lot of benefit. I think maybe a lot of unexpected benefit that we could get out of sort of welcoming discomfort in exchange for a better situation. In other words, it's not just philosophically better for us. It's not just philosophically better that we learn to diminish the ego and to welcome discomfort in exchange for a better world on the outside. It's not just some platitudinous pie in the sky utopia, whatever. It may actually also be good for our metabolisms, and it's sort of like a way, using the athletic analogy, to make us more fit as athletes in life. Okay, so as part of our fitness, and if we look at life as being athletic or being a sport, it's part of our necessary fitness, welcoming and taking on discomfort in exchange for things better, sort of in the broader environmental picture. Okay. So basically, to really compact that, to make that compact is like a routine in our computer programming. Basically, it is the subroutine of trade-off. Okay, trade-off specifically around feeling uncomfortable, even to the point of feeling pain. Okay. Now, obviously, you do it intelligently, right? Everything's done intelligently. I'm not just going to feel some pain just for the sake of pain. I mean, people with borderline already do that. It's a way of relieving stress, and the purpose of this is not to manage our feelings. It's not to relieve feelings. It is putting feelings kind of on the secondary, taking it off the pedestal of first priority, putting our priority on our actual engagement with the world. Okay. Prioritize engaging with the world, deprioritize how we feel. Okay. But part of being able to implement, okay, an engagement with the world as our first priority, we have to have, some routines and I guess some plays, some programs that are already behaviorally adapted in us, kind of like a sports training. I practice this play, I practice this maneuver, whatever. I'm conditioned. We have to condition ourselves for that little subroutine of trade-off. Okay, trading discomfort for something better, better situation in the environment. So that we can actually effectively practice engagement in the world. Okay. And so I think, we talk about self-esteem, we talk about all this, I personally think that when you're actually engaged in the world, I think there is no self-esteem. Okay. I think because self-esteem is a preoccupation with how I feel. When you've really deprioritized how you feel, your self-esteem becomes irrelevant. It's not even an issue. Okay. But I think that even having said that, I think that when a person really is engaged in the world and really is trained to have discomfort, real hurt and discomfort in exchange for making things better in the world, okay, I personally think that that does result in a kind of, which you might call self-esteem. Although it's not really for the self itself, it's more just, you're participating in something of a higher order, okay? It's not about you yourself, but you're participating in a situation, an economic situation, a behavioral situation, a level of being as a human or being as a being where you're at a higher level of operation. And so I think it may not be a particularly selfish self-esteem, but it is sort of knowing that you're participating in a better way, So it's almost like you're enacting a better philosophical, a better philosophical existence, okay? And you're participating in a more meaningful, a richer existence, So now I don't want to call that self-esteem. I really don't, because I don't think it is, So yeah, so to try to summarize this video, I just think that, we can't really talk about, implementing, let's say, engagement with the world in favor of, we can't really talk about prioritizing engagement in the world over, emotionality without athletic conditioning. Okay, we have to condition ourselves, train ourselves to have that operational play, that operational action, okay, of trade-off. So trade-off has to be part of our innate active vocabulary. Okay, in other words, if life is not just a sport but also a language, okay, it's like a sport language, the operation of trade-off has to be programmed and conditioned into us. Okay. I mean, and here's the thing, a lot of people with personality disorders say, hey, but I can't do that. Of course you can't do that. There's a lot of things we cannot do without training. Okay. You take like dogs, you take like people in the military, they can't do also anything without training. You have to train. Okay. So if you don't approach it from the perspective of, let's say, being like an athlete, or let's say being like a professional pilot, or being a professional military, member of the military. If you don't really train, then of course you'll never know what you can or can't do. Okay. And if you don't have the training, of course you can't do it. That's right. People that don't have the training, if you don't have training, go ahead and try to land a 747. You can't do it, right? Nobody can, right? Okay. So what's the difference? If I have cluster B and there's things I can't do, oh yeah, just like I can't fly a 747 without training. Okay, well, why don't you go get the training? Because with training, people can land a 747 with training, with experience. With training, most people could never play football or never play the position of quarterback, but with training, some people can. And even people who are not really athletic, if you had training, you could at least do it better than if you didn't have, better than just sitting on the couch and reading a book about it, right? So the fact is, we can't really talk. We should not really talk about what we can't do if we don't first get into training for it. Okay. And if we're not willing to look at our lives as an athletic, like a sport, okay, then there's really no point in talking about anything. Okay. Because we haven't really put ourselves in the position of taking it on as a sport and learning how to condition ourselves. I say condition yourself as though life were a sport, okay, and really train, and then tell me what you can't do. You see what I'm saying? Tell me what you can't do after you've gone into training. Then I'll be listening, okay, and then we should take it seriously. All right. So in the training, in the sport of life, I'm just suggesting the importance of having one compact routine, which is trade-off discomfort, even to the point of pain, okay, to a reasonable point. We're not stupid, all right, but doing it in a smart way, but even to the point of pain, trading off, a certain amount of discomfort or pain in exchange for having something better in my immediate environment or my larger environment, okay, in engaging in the world that way. All right, so trade-off, trading a little bit of discomfort for something better, okay. And I think, when we have that embedded and conditioned into us as an athletic conditioning, we condition ourselves almost like if it were a sport, get that condition into us, then we can talk about what we can and can't do. And, if we find ourselves falling short, we may need more training, but even if after training we don't get to the highest level, at least we're improved from where we started. Okay. Training will always get us some improvement from where we started. So, look at it as a path. Maybe I'm not very good, but hey, every day I get better and I'm better than I was, and any improvement is gold, in the recovery business. So, all right. So yeah, basically this video has been about trade-off as an essential programmed conditioning component to changing the priority, okay, and prioritizing engagement in the world over emotionality. All right. So really appreciate you guys watching. And I offer these videos to really, really help people that are struggling with cluster B and cluster B adjacent issues. So, I really encourage anybody who has any kind of cluster B situation or adjacent issue, ADD or addiction, to really, really take on life as an athletic sport, as really as like a sport. And so to take it on as an athletic conditioning, and I guarantee that will at least offer improvement if we take it seriously. All right. So I really appreciate that. And thanks for watching.